Okay, looks like many of us are already here. So for the sake of time, we are going to go ahead and start. Before we begin the official part of the presentation, we'd like to let you know that we have been experiencing some network connectivity issues. So if at any point you feel like we're disconnecting, please let us know using the Q&A function, and we'll do our best to adjust, but just wanted to give you a heads up in case we encounter any technical difficulties. With that, I would like to welcome you all to our pre-arrival webinar today. If you've joined us before, you know that my name is Karina Ivanyan. I'm an intake advisor here at the International Students and Programs Office, also known as ISPO at UC San Diego. And ISPO is one of the 4 units in the Global Initiatives Department, which also includes the International Faculty and Scholars Office, Study Abroad, and the Office of the Assistant Vice Chancellor of Global Initiatives. And today, we're going to be talking about SEVIS transfer process. With that, I'm going to pass it over to my colleagues to introduce themselves as well.
Thank you, Karina. Hi, everyone. My name is Gabi Hoffman. I'm the Assistant Director for Student Experience and Engagement here at ISPO, and I work alongside Karina as well as my colleague Jessica, who will have introduced herself now.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Jessica Boyle. I am an International Student Advisor here at ISPO and very much looking forward to this session with you.
Thank you both. A few other housekeeping things for today's presentation. You are in listen-only mode, which means you can hear us, but we can't hear you. We also really encourage you to ask questions throughout the presentation. So please feel free to do that using the Q&A feature on your screens. If by any chance we don't have time to answer your question, please connect with one of our advisors by going to icontact.ucsd.edu. And lastly, we are recording, so you'll be able to view this webinar again, and it will be available at inewstudentwebinars.ucsd.edu. So this is just, again, that reiteration of that Q&A feature on your screen, so you can type in the questions. We have dedicated additional time at the end of the presentation to do a live Q&A, but you may also notice us typing in the responses there. So again, I highly encourage you to ask your questions and don't hesitate to use that feature to do so. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Gabi.
Great. Thank you, Karina. So I'd like to take just a moment here to go over our ISPO website and specifically our first steps checklist. All right, so for those of you who may not be familiar with this site yet, I'd like to point you all to our inewstudent.ucsd.edu website that resides on the larger ISPO website. So this page is dedicated specifically to new international students, just like you. And as you can see here, when you land on this page, we've divided up the different checklist items by degree level. So whether you are an undergraduate student or a graduate student transferring to UC San Diego, we've laid out all of your steps that you can see here into 3 main sections. The goal really with this page is to help you navigate the multiple pieces that you need to ensure you take care of before you come to UC San Diego. That includes, of course, first and foremost, requesting your visa documents, your SEVIS transfer in this case for today. So please make sure to visit this page. This, again, outlines everything for you nicely in checklist format so that you're not missing any important key pieces before you arrive at UC San Diego. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to my colleagues.
Thank you, Gabi. All right, we're going to get into the main bulk of this presentation and help you plan ahead for transferring your SEVIS record to UC San Diego. Before we get started, I do want to let you know this presentation has a lot of information in it. I would encourage you to listen actively and watch the slides with the reminder that we are recording, so you will be able to go back and watch this webinar in a few days once it is posted online. To start, I want to briefly share today's goals. What we're hoping you take away from this presentation is an understanding of the steps in the SEVIS transfer process, an understanding of the SEVIS transfer timeline and key dates that you need to take action by, and an understanding of how to request your SEVIS transfer, both with your current institution and at UC San Diego. So let's get started. So what is a SEVIS transfer? An F1 student may be eligible to transfer between student and exchange visitor program certified schools. And this just refers to institutions who host F1 international students. The transfer process is a way to electronically move an F1 student record, also called a SEVIS record, from one school to another while retaining the same SEVIS ID listed at the top of the Form I-20. The SEVIS transfer process does a couple of things. Number one, it sets a date called the SEVIS release date, on which responsibility for the student's record transfers to the new school. This basically means that your current school, on a specific day, will transfer the responsibility of maintaining your F1 student record to UC San Diego. Number two, the SEVIS transfer process ensures that your current SEVIS ID number, which is that long number at the top of your Form I-20 that starts with an N00. It ensures that that number will remain the same, even though you will be obtaining a new Form I-20 from UC San Diego. And then number three, it ensures that our institution, the transfer in school, will now be responsible for updating your SEVIS record and advising you on how to maintain your F1 status. So the SEVIS transfer process has 4 steps to it, and we're going to walk through each of these steps as part of this presentation. Step 1 is to determine whether you are even eligible for a SEVIS transfer. Step 2 is to request the SEVIS transfer from your current institution, which will include you choosing your SEVIS release date. Step 3 is to then request your new Form I-20 from UC San Diego, and step 4 is to receive that Form I-20 and take care of the necessary action items to complete your transfer. As I mentioned, we're going to walk through each of these, so let's get started by looking at step 1. So not everyone starting their program in fall 2023 is eligible for a SEVIS transfer. Even if you are currently in the US now or if you're maintaining your current SEVIS record in F1 status, you must meet 3 eligibility criteria in order to be eligible for a SEVIS transfer. Number 1, you must be maintaining your current active F1 status. So this means that you are following all the rules and requirements with your current school and maintaining your F1 enrollment or OPT in accord with US government regulations. So in other words, you do need to be a current F1 student and maintaining your valid F1 status. Number 2 is your last date of enrollment or your last date of OPT must be within 5 months, less than 152 days of your program start date here at UC San Diego. We're going to do some demonstrations so that you can better understand this timeline and apply it to your own situation. But essentially, your start date here at UC San Diego cannot be more than 5 months from your last day of enrollment or last day of OPT with your prior institution. And then number 3, this is with regards to timing the actual release of your SEVIS record. Your SEVIS record must be released to UC San Diego before the end of your respective grace period. For F1 students, you have a 60-day grace period following completion of your enrollment or OPT. You must request that your current institution release your SEVIS record to UC San Diego before the end of your 60-day grace period. So some common questions that F1 students typically ask when they're trying to determine whether they're eligible for transfer is, where do I find my program end date? How do I know when my grace period starts and ends? In other words, how do I figure out my own deadline to transfer? So let's talk about how to determine your program end date. So remember that in order to be eligible for transfer, you first need to determine that the start of your program here at UC San Diego is within 5 months of your last date of enrollment at your current institution or your last date of authorized OPT. So your program end date can be one of 2 things, either your last date of enrollment, or if you are on OPT, it will typically be the last day of your authorized OPT. If you're currently enrolled and you will not be undertaking OPT prior to starting your new program at UC San Diego, you can look on your Form I-20 for your program end date. Now, it's very important to note that sometimes this date may not be properly updated. It may be an estimate of your anticipated program completion and not reflect your actual last day of enrollment. So we would strongly encourage you to check with your current DSO or International Student Office to verify your actual program end date. You will need to make sure that your last date of enrollment is within 5 months of your program start here at UC San Diego. And that program end date, that last date of enrollment, is also what will determine the start of your 60-day grace period. In other words, the time frame within which you must transfer your SEVIS record. Alternatively, if you are currently on post-completion OPT or the STEM OPT extension, instead of referencing your last date of enrollment, you will use the last date of your authorized OPT as your program end date for the purpose of the SEVIS transfer process. You can reference the card expires date on your current EAD card to see when your last date of authorized OPT is. And as in the previous case, you'll need to make sure that that last date of authorized OPT is within 5 months of your program start here at UC San Diego. That last date of authorized OPT is what will determine the start of your 60-day grace period. Again, the time frame within which you must transfer your SEVIS record, pardon me. So now that we've discussed how to locate your program end date, let's talk about the 60-day grace period. Remember that the start and end of your grace period is determined by your program end date. In the 60 days following either your last day of enrollment or your last day of authorized OPT, as an F1 student, you are required to take some sort of action on your SEVIS record. Some of the actions that F1 students can take during their 60-day grace period are working in the US, starting a new program at your current school, starting a new program at a new school, changing visa status, pursuing a change of status, or if none of these actions are taken, the student must depart the US by the end of their 60-day grace period. In this presentation, we're talking about the action of starting a new program at a new school. This is the SEVIS transfer process. So to be eligible for SEVIS transfer, your SEVIS record must be released to UC San Diego before the end of the 60-day grace period. So let's look at a visual example to help demonstrate how your program end date is related to your grace period. You can see that in this example, the student is currently enrolled. They are not on OPT. Their program end date is their last day of enrollment at their current school. Immediately following their last day of enrollment, they enter their 60-day grace period. If they do not take any action within that 60-day grace period, such as transferring their SEVIS record or applying for OPT, etc., their SEVIS record will complete and their F1 status will automatically end. Once that happens, this student will no longer be eligible for transfer. Likewise, here's an example where the student is currently on authorized OPT. It looks very similar. Their OPT end date is their last day of authorized OPT as shown on their EAD card. Immediately following their last day of authorized OPT, the student enters their 60-day grace period. And again, if the student does not take one of the actions we previously discussed, then their SEVIS record will complete and their F1 status will automatically end. Once that F1 status completes, the student is no longer eligible for transfer. Okay, so to summarize everything we've talked about so far, remember that this is what you need to check on to determine if you're eligible for a SEVIS transfer. Is your F1 status in good standing? Are you completing enrollment or OPT within 5 months of your program start here at UC San Diego? And can you ensure that your current institution can release your SEVIS record to UC San Diego before the end of your 60-day grace period? Now that we've looked at step 1, let's look at step 2, requesting that your current institution transfer your SEVIS record and choosing your release date. So this part of the SEVIS transfer process is going to require that you work directly with your current institution. It's very important to note that the SEVIS transfer process is not automatic. You as the student are required to initiate this process and make sure that the transfer gets completed. In this step 2, we're going to talk about what you need to do to initiate this process. So as I mentioned, you'll need to talk to your current institution, talk to your DSO or your international student office, and you'll need to ask them, how do I transfer my SEVIS record? How do I request that transfer? What do I need to submit in order for you to release my SEVIS record? Most schools require students to fill out a form of some kind in order to request a SEVIS transfer. Your current DSO or international student office will be able to tell you what they require you to submit. When you ask them about this, it's also a good idea to double check your eligibility with them. Remember that you should have already hopefully done the work of step 1 ahead of time to determine that you are eligible for SEVIS transfer. But it's a great idea to check your understanding of your eligibility with your current school, especially if you have questions about it. So choosing a SEVIS release date. When you request your SEVIS transfer of your current institution, you are going to need to tell them what date you would like them to release your SEVIS record to UC San Diego. If you remember from earlier on in this presentation, your SEVIS release date is the specific day that your current school will electronically transfer your SEVIS record to UC San Diego. It is your responsibility ultimately to choose your SEVIS release date. So of course, the big question students often have is, how do I do that? How do I choose my release date? What's important to remember is that you need to choose the SEVIS release date that is before the end of your 60-day grace period. If you're currently enrolled, your SEVIS release date must be within your grace period. If you're currently on OPT, your SEVIS release date must be a date either within your grace period or in some cases a date during your authorized OPT if that release date meets the 5-month rule. So we're going to look at each of these 3 scenarios so that you can apply your own situation to the relevant timeline. So in this first example, this student is currently enrolled. They are not on OPT. You can see that their program end date is their last day of enrollment. Following their last day of enrollment is their 60-day grace period. And later this fall, they're looking forward to starting their program here at UC San Diego. This student has already done the work to determine that they're eligible for a SEVIS transfer. They know that their F1 record is currently in good standing, and they know that their last day of enrollment at their current institution is less than 5 months out from the start of their program here at UC San Diego. So this student is ready to request that their current institution transfer their SEVIS record. In order to request this, the student needs to tell their current institution what specific date they want their SEVIS record released to UC San Diego. The student can choose any specific date within their 60-day grace period. In other words, they must choose a date after their last day of enrollment, but before the end of their grace period, any date in that time frame. Remember that if your grace period ends and you have not taken any action, your F1 record will automatically complete and you will no longer be eligible for transfer. So this student chooses a specific SEVIS release date within their grace period and reports this to their current institution following whatever their school's process is for requesting a SEVIS transfer. Once you decide on a SEVIS release date and follow your school's process for requesting that transfer, your current school will release your SEVIS record to UC San Diego on the date that you have chosen. And from the day that your SEVIS record is released, past the end of your grace period and until you begin your program here at UC San Diego, you may remain in the US. You do not have to depart the US during this time. I'm going to say that again. As long as you meet the SEVIS transfer eligibility requirements and your SEVIS record gets released within your 60-day grace period, you may remain in the US and wait for the start of your new program here at UC San Diego. So let's look at the same example for those of you who are on OPT. The process is very similar for those of you who will soon be ending your post-completion OPT or STEM OPT extension. As you can see in this new example now, this student is currently on their approved OPT. They've identified that their program end date is their last day of authorized OPT as shown on their EAD card. They've identified their grace period, the 60 days immediately following their last day of authorized OPT, and they've confirmed that their last day of authorized OPT and the start date of their new program here at UC San Diego are less than 5 months apart. Just as in the prior example, this student is going to request a specific SEVIS release date that is within their 60-day grace period. And in the time between their SEVIS release date and the start of their new program here at UC San Diego, they can remain in the US. It's important to remember that during this period after your SEVIS release date, while you are waiting for your new program to start, you may not continue your OPT employment because your OPT has ended. Okay, now there's a third scenario that some of you may be in, which is what if your period of authorized OPT goes past your start date here at UC San Diego? You can see in this example that this student is on approved OPT. However, their last date of authorized OPT is after the start of their new program. Those of you who have an OPT authorization period that goes past the start date of your new program will need to end your OPT a bit early because you will need to transfer your SEVIS record to UC San Diego in advance of your new program starting. This will mean that you must choose a SEVIS release date that is during your period of authorized OPT. The 5-month rule still applies in this case. The SEVIS release date you choose must be less than 5 months away from the start of your new program here at UC San Diego. Now, as I just mentioned, the SEVIS release date will be taking place during your period of authorized OPT. If you are transferring your SEVIS record during your period of OPT authorization, it's very important to note that your OPT will then end on your SEVIS release date. So now it looks like this. In this case, your last day of authorized OPT becomes the date of your SEVIS transfer. I want to repeat this again. It's very important to understand that on your SEVIS release date, your OPT will end. If you select a SEVIS release date during your OPT period, your OPT will end on that release date. As in the other two scenarios, in the time between your SEVIS release date and the start of your new program here at UC San Diego, you can remain in the US, but again, remember that during this period, while you're waiting for your new program, you may not continue your OPT employment because your OPT will have ended. Okay, so I know this has been a lot of information. Remember, don't worry, this webinar will be posted online if you decide you'd like to watch it again later. We're going to move on to step 3, and the next 2 steps are slightly less information. So we're going to dive into them hopefully a little more quickly. So step 3, after you've chosen your SEVIS release date and you've followed your current institution's process for requesting a transfer, now it's time to request your new Form I-20 from UC San Diego. To request your new Form I-20, you'll need to visit our online International Student Services platform, which, as mentioned earlier, is called iPortal. You can access it by going to iportal.ucsd.edu. In iPortal, you will need to submit one of the following new admit service forms, either the new admit I-20 request, if your program follows a regular fall 2023 start date, or the new admit I-20 special start programs request form if you've been admitted to an early start program. You might be asking, how do I know if I've been admitted to an early start program? If you have, it's likely you received a letter from your department letting you know that you are required to attend a summer program in advance of the fall start of classes. If you're not sure, please ask your academic or major department whether you are in an early start program. Regardless of which one of these new admit forms you fill out, the form is going to ask you a series of questions to collect your SEVIS transfer information. You'll be asked whether your last date of enrollment at your previous institution or your last date of approved OPT is within 5 months of your UC San Diego program start. If you've determined that yes, that's true, and you're therefore eligible for a SEVIS transfer, then you will want to select that option. You'll then be asked if you plan on transferring your SEVIS record to UC San Diego. And obviously, if you plan on doing that, you'll want to select yes. You'll then be asked to provide the name of the institution that currently holds your SEVIS record, the contact information for your international student advisor, and your current SEVIS ID number. Again, your SEVIS ID is the number at the top of your current Form I-20 that begins with N00. Last but not least, you will need to tell us what your SEVIS release date is. This will let us know when we can expect to receive your SEVIS record. In iPortal, make sure that once you complete your new admit form, you both save it and submit it. After you've completed it, the form will automatically save. You typically then need to navigate to the menu at the top of the iPortal website, click on requests, and then submit your new admit request. Once you've submitted your new admit request and your SEVIS release date has passed, we will process your new Form I-20 within 15 business days. So again, you'll receive your new UC San Diego Form I-20 within 15 business days of your SEVIS release date or your iPortal request submission, whichever one is later. Both of those need to happen in order for us to process your Form I-20. All right, on to the last step. So now that you've submitted your I-20 request in iPortal, the last step in the SEVIS transfer process is to receive that I-20 and take the necessary actions to complete your transfer. When you receive your new Form I-20, it's going to show your SEVIS record as being in transfer pending status. Your SEVIS transfer cannot be fully completed until you've met certain enrollment requirements and submitted a check-in form following the start of your new program here. So let's quickly talk through what you'll need to do. So once you receive your transfer pending Form I-20, you are now in what we call the transfer pending period. Please, upon receipt of your new Form I-20, double check it to make sure that all the information is correct, and particularly make sure that the SEVIS ID number matches the SEVIS ID that was on your previous I-20 from your prior institution. You may also, at that time during the transfer pending period, enroll in courses. Certainly, you will want to work on getting enrolled in your fall courses once registration opens. You may also be eligible to enroll in summer classes if that's something you're interested in. Please check with your college or academic department about how, whether, and which courses you could choose. You are expected to enroll at full-time status by the program start date listed on your new Form I-20. At UC San Diego, full-time status is 12 units. Additionally, I want to add something here that you are required to have an in-person component to your enrollment. Most of the classes that will be offered at UC San Diego this upcoming school year will be fully in-person classes. However, there are likely to be some online courses offered. As an F1 student, you may not enroll in a fully online load of courses. I also want to add that because of the pandemic, the past few years, you may be used to being able to enroll in more online classes than was typically allowed prior to the pandemic. There is a good chance that this allowance may be changing starting with this upcoming school year. The US government made several allowances for F1 students to undertake online study the past few years due to the pandemic. They have not yet issued their guidance for the upcoming 2023 academic school year. However, there is an expectation that allowances that were made during the pandemic may no longer apply. So all that to say, it is in your best interest to enroll in a course load that is predominantly in person. And again, most of the classes offered at UC San Diego this fall will be fully in-person courses. All right, moving on. Once you receive your transfer pending Form I-20, you are required to report any needed changes to the information or to your plans to enroll in UC San Diego via iPortal. On our website, you can find instructions for reporting changes in iPortal based on what the change may be. For example, if you need to report a change to your address, your legal name, or your contact information, or maybe you decide to change majors, anything like that, please make sure you report it to us so that we can keep your Form I-20 updated. You may also apply for on-campus employment during the transfer pending period. If you do not want to sit around during the summer and you would like to stay busy by finding an on-campus job, you can do that. Remember, you are not permitted to work off campus during the transfer period. However, you may be eligible to work on campus. And if that's something that's of interest to you, we have great resources through our Career Center who can help you identify on-campus positions that you may be eligible for. And then last but not least, during the transfer pending period, you can travel internationally and re-enter the US using your new transfer pending I-20, and or if you are needing to travel abroad to renew or apply for a new F1 visa, you can do that as well. All right, we're almost to the end here. Very last but not least, please know that your SEVIS transfer process is not completed until your program start date at UC San Diego arrives and you have submitted your check-in form in iPortal. So in iPortal, there is a service form called check-in for I-20 activation. You must submit this form within 10 days of your UC San Diego program start date. And again, you can find your program start date. You'll be able to find your program start date on your new Form I-20. The check-in form will ask you a series of questions, including having you confirm that you are in the US. Once we receive your check-in form, we will then activate your SEVIS record. And at that point, your SEVIS transfer process will be considered complete. Okay, so in summary, for step 4, your new transfer pending I-20 will be issued to you after your SEVIS release date has passed and we've received your iPortal request for your new I-20. Make sure once you get that I-20 that you double check the information and remember that your SEVIS transfer process is not complete until your program start date arrives and you've submitted your check-in form in iPortal. Okay, so we've gone through all 4 steps. I know it was a lot of information. As a reminder, some quick resources. A recording of this webinar is going to be available in the next few days at inewstudentwebinars.ucsd.edu. If you have questions, we also highly encourage you to check out our iNewStudent website at inewstudent.ucsd.edu. We have information on this website about the SEVIS transfer process, about getting started at UC San Diego, and much more. And if you have more case-specific questions, we would love to speak with you. You're welcome to visit icontact.ucsd.edu to speak with an ISPO advisor. And without further ado, I know we probably have some questions, but I think we have a few slides about getting engaged before we move into the Q&A session. So I will pass it back to my colleague, Karina.
Thank you, Jessica. At this time, I would like to encourage everybody to submit their questions. As Jessica mentioned, we will be starting the Q&A session really shortly, but we want to make sure that you had enough time to submit your questions beforehand. Before we transitioned, I do want to talk to you a little bit about getting engaged on campus and the different programs that our office offers to support your transition and to support your sense of belonging here on campus. So first, I'd like to highlight ISPO specialty programs, also known as I programs. This is just a few that you see on the screen. We have a lot more offered. A few that may be of interest to you are coffee hours. This is one of our most popular programs. We offer it monthly, and it's a great informal space for students to connect with one another. It's also a great opportunity for you to meet ISPO advisors outside of regular advising hours. So we usually have games, free food, and giveaways during that time. So it's a really fun event that a lot of our students participate in. And this is open, just like all of our programs are open to both domestic and international students. Trident Trekkers is a collaboration with UC San Diego Recreation. And through that program, we take students on trips around San Diego. So that can be kayaking, snorkeling, hiking, rock climbing. It's a great way to explore the greater San Diego area. It's usually really fun, especially since we are so close to the beach. So we highly encourage you to check those out. There's usually a fee associated with it, but it covers all of the equipment, all of the transportation, and anything like that. So again, for the sake of time, I'm not going to go over every single one of them, but please visit iprograms.ucsd.edu to check out all of our programs. Another page that I highly encourage you bookmark is our iEvents calendar. And so this is where we'll post up-to-date registration as well as dates for all of our events. This is also a space for our campus partners to submit events with a global focus. So you can see some of the ISPO signature programs like Community and Coffee Hours, as well as some of the other ones that our campus partners offer. And so it's very easy to find if you go to ievents.ucsd.edu. Each event will usually have little tags to kind of help you navigate it, and you can also filter using those tags to find what interests you most. We are on social media. We're pretty active on our Instagram. It's a great way to stay in touch with our office and just kind of stay updated on anything that is happening. So I highly encourage you to follow us at ispo.ucsd. We're also on LinkedIn. I know that information is not provided on the slide, but feel free to connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and we have a lot of different resources and videos on our YouTube channel as well. A few additional resources and just brief information about upcoming webinars. If you're interested in learning more about any COVID-19 related policies at UC San Diego, please check out returntolearn.ucsd.edu for most up-to-date information. We are approaching the end of our pre-arrival webinars, but we do still have a few more coming up next week, such as finance and student accounts, campus safety, and if you're an undergraduate student, we will have a separate session dedicated to student life on campus. As always, all of the webinars, recordings, as well as registrations are available on inewstudentwebinars.ucsd.edu. And with that, we're gonna officially begin our Q&A session. So I'm gonna pass it over back to Gabi and Jessica.
Thank you, Karina. So let's see. I see it looks like we have a question. How long does it take to receive a new I-20 form after requesting a change? So if I'm understanding correctly, this would be in a situation where you have already received your new Form I-20 from UC San Diego, and then you need to report a change to the information. In this case, the time it takes to receive your updated Form I-20 depends a bit on the nature of what change you needed to make. So what was the information you were needing to change? But generally speaking, it will take 10 business days to process that change. In some cases, again, depending on what the information you needed to change was, it may be less than that. But generally speaking, if you need to make any kind of amendment to your transfer pending I-20, 10 business days would be the processing time. Again, this is different from how long does it take to receive your new I-20 if you're receiving it for the first time. Remember, once you have submitted your request for your new I-20 in iPortal and your SEVIS release date has passed, then we will process your new Form I-20 for the first time in 15 business days. In both cases, once your I-20 is ready for you to receive, it will be uploaded to iPortal where you can then download it from. I think at this time we have no other questions, so we'll give it a minute. If you have other questions that you would be interested in us answering, please go ahead and submit them now.
And I know I see some raised hands, so just to reiterate, unfortunately, we're not able to, due to the settings, accept questions through audio. So if you do have a question for Jessica or Gabi or myself, please submit it in the Q&A feature on your screens. It should allow you to type that question. And as Jessica mentioned, we will give it a minute or so just to give you enough time to submit those.
Okay, so we have another question here. Do I receive a digital copy of the I-20 after the requesting of a change? Yes, so we no longer issue paper form I-20s. Every I-20 you receive from ISPO will be a digital copy of the I-20. As I mentioned before, whenever you are requesting something in iPortal, that results in your I-20 being reissued. So whether in this case you are receiving your transfer pending form I-20 for the first time from us, or as in this question, you've requested a change and will be issued an updated I-20. The new I-20 will be uploaded to that same request in iPortal as a PDF, as a digital copy of the I-20. You will then need to download the I-20 and print it yourself in order to sign it. But yes, you will receive it as a digital copy. Okay, so, So we have another question here about what if the graduate office at UC San Diego has received all of my documents, but they've told me that my portal will not be updated until June? How does this affect my visa application or my ability to get a Form I-20? This is a great question. Gabi, would you mind chiming in? My understanding, if I'm understanding the question correctly, or I'd be curious how you're reading it, if this is the student has already been admitted and just needing to submit additional documents to graduate admissions.
Yes, exactly. So for students whose applications portals within the graduate division or GEPA, when they're still waiting on pending documents like transcripts, things like that, and your WES accreditation piece is still being looked over, this does not impact your ability to apply for an I-20. So as long as you have been admitted, every student is under the heading provisionally admitted. And that just means that you're waiting for those transcripts to be reviewed. That process can sometimes take all the way till the fall, we know. And of course, we don't want that to hinder our students from getting I-20. So as long as you are admitted, as long as you're able to access your systems on campus, log in with your Active Directory and so forth, you can request the I-20. There's no delay in that.
And I think also, if I may add, just as a reminder from some of our previous pre-Revel webinars, August 1st is the deadline for students to request a new I-20 from ISPO. So just please keep in mind that date as well.
I noticed there's a question here too, asking if my spouse needs to apply for their F2. So they're not currently in the US. Your current F1 is expired. Do I need to leave the US in order to apply for a visa? So no, you don't necessarily have to do that. If you don't have plans to leave the US, if you successfully, you maintain status and follow all the rules, as Jessica mentioned in the presentation, and you transfer your SEVIS record to us, we produce a UCSD I-20 for you. You do not need to depart and get a new visa. When you are requesting your I-20 documents from us, of course, just be sure in that application in the iPortal to indicate that you do plan on bringing your spouse with you in F2 status. That will then enable our team to know that we should issue an an I-20 for the F2. That I-20 can be given directly to your spouse, and they can then apply for their visa stamp on their own at the consulate. You don't have to go with them. The principal F1 holder doesn't need to be with them, so that she can apply or he can apply on their own. So that's not an issue. And another great question here, will the SEVIS ID be the same on the new I-20 as the previous I-20? So yes, if you do successfully transfer your record over to us, if you do a SEVIS transfer, exactly, your SEVIS ID will remain the same.
So it looks like we have a couple questions about an August 1st deadline by when a student needs to request their Form I-20 from ISPO. This is a great question. We discussed as part of this presentation how you need to determine your own timeline for transfer. And there are two pieces two sides to the SEVIS transfer process. Remember, one part of it is coordinating the transfer with your current institution. And then the second part of it is requesting your new Form I-20 from ISPO. We discussed that in terms of coordinating the transfer with your current institution, your SEVIS record has to be released to us, to UC San Diego, by the end of your 60-day grace period, right? So there is a time frame within which you need to make sure that your current institution releases your SEVIS record to UC San Diego, and that time frame is going to be different for every student depending on your program end date and when your grace period ends. We do here at UC San Diego have an internal deadline by when we need incoming students to request their new I-20 in iPortal, meaning submit their iPortal request form for their new I-20, and that deadline is August 1st. You want to make sure, obviously, if you're coordinating your SEVIS transfer with your current school, as soon as you submit to them whatever you are needing to initiate the transfer process, we would encourage you to also come to the iPortal and submit your request for a new Form I-20. It's always better just to be ahead, then you can take care of that, and then that you'll receive your new Form I-20 from UC San Diego once your SEVIS release date has passed, because we already have your request form in iPortal. But the very latest that you can submit the request form for your new I-20 in iPortal is August 1st. So even if your SEVIS release date is going to be scheduled for sometime after August 1st, that is okay. You can work with your current institution now to request the SEVIS transfer, and you could tell them now, I'm requesting a SEVIS transfer and I want you to transfer my SEVIS record to UC San Diego on August 15th, or whatever the date might be that meets your specific timeline for transfer. But then you also need to make sure that you have submitted the request to us for your new I-20 by August 1st. All right, so we have another question. Will the SEVIS ID be the same in the new I-20 form as the previous I-20 form after requesting a change? So remember that one of the things that the SEVIS transfer process does is it allows you as the student to retain or keep the same SEVIS ID number, even though your SEVIS record has moved from one school to another. So the SEVIS transfer process is going to move your SEVIS record with your same SEVIS ID number from your current institution to UC San Diego. And yes, if you are requesting any kind of change on the information on that Form I-20 after you have received your first transfer pending I-20. So for example, you need to report a change to your address or your contact information. Your SEVIS ID number will stay the same. All right, so we have a question about if the SEVIS release date is decided before you re-enter the US. So if you are going to be abroad when your SEVIS release date happens, will you be able to enter the US with your previous I-20 or not? That's a great question. So remember that once your SEVIS release date comes, your SEVIS record is going to move from your current institution to UC San Diego. At that point, the Form I-20 that you hold from your previous, or right now your current, but your previous institution will no longer be valid. So you will need to receive your new Form I-20 from UC San Diego in order to re-enter the US. You will want to make sure that you use the Form I-20 from UC San Diego, your transfer pending I-20, to re-enter the US. That's the one you'll be wanting to show at customs. In addition, as I mentioned earlier, if you are abroad when your SEVIS release date happens and you are needing to renew or apply for a new F1 visa stamp, also in that case, you will want to make sure you receive your new transfer pending Form I-20 from UC San Diego in order to move through the F1 visa process. So we have a question about if you are currently on H-1B status. If you are on H-1B status right now, you would not be eligible for a SEVIS transfer. So this presentation is a bit outside the scope of your situation. I would encourage you two things. One, to maybe discuss with your immigration lawyer your changing from H-1B to F-1 status. I would also welcome you to stop by our Zoom advising hours and speak with one of our advisors here at ISPO. You can find our Zoom advising schedule by visiting icontact.ucsd.edu.
We have a few more minutes in this webinar, so if you haven't had a chance to ask your question yet, please don't hesitate to submit those in the Q&A feature.
One thing I wanted to just bring up here for those of you who are going to be doing a SEVIS transfer. So what you will notice when you successfully transfer your SEVIS record to us and you are issued a UC San Diego I-20, you'll notice on the form I-20 that it says transfer pending. So I want to just be really clear for our students who are in this situation. Perhaps you are abroad when you receive this and you're going to be re-entering the US, or even if you're not, if you're just staying in the US between completion of your current program and coming to UC San Diego. The I-20 that says transfer pending is okay. It is valid for travel. So the transfer pending does not mean that the transfer has not gone through or that it is not acceptable for travel or that things are not complete. This is the status that it moves to once your record has been successfully transferred to us. We basically wouldn't be able to issue the UCSD I-20 to you without it being successfully transferred to us. So again, when it says transfer pending, it's no need for concern, no reason for concern. That is valid for travel. Typically what will happen, is in the fall quarter, once we SEVIS register your record, it will change to SEVIS active. If you would like an updated I-20 that shows SEVIS active, for any travel, just for peace of mind, you can request an updated I-20 in the iPortal. It typically takes only about 5 business days to get that to you. But again, it's not required for travel or that in-between period before the fall quarter begins and we register your record.
All right, and I think we have one more question that has come in here. May I submit my I-20 request in the iPortal before contacting my current institution for transfer in order to meet the August 1st deadline? Will I be able to change information in that request after I submit the iPortal request? This is a great question. So as we mentioned, we would encourage you to submit this, the iPortal request for your new I-20 as soon as you are able. As you might recall from from the presentation. The request is going to ask you for some information that you may need to ask your current institution for if you do not know it already. So one of the things you can do is you can start filling out the iPortal request and just leave it in saved, not submitted status. And that way you can go back and continue working on it and submit it once you do in fact have all of the information. Remember, one of the things you will need to tell us in the iPortal form is what your SEVIS release date is. And that is something that you may need to coordinate or double check with your current institution. So again, you technically, if you know all that information, might be able to submit the iPortal request before you request the SEVIS transfer of your current institution, but we would really encourage you to speak with them first and make sure that the transfer is set up. And then also knowing that you can start working on the iPortal request form and just leave it in saved status and submit it once you have all of the information.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you, Gabi, for all of the important information that we've shared today. It looks like we are at time, so I'd like to thank all of our participants for joining us. We hope you found this webinar helpful. If you have any questions as new incoming students, please don't hesitate to check out inewstudent.ucsd.edu. You can also email us at inewstudent@ucsd.edu or connect with one of our advisors by going to icontact.ucsd.edu. We will be posting the recording of this webinar shortly. And with that, I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining us.